Journeys Ahead, Beyond Trilogy, Part 1, Chapter 6, Best Friends. Like the distant roar of a lion, the mighty and powerful call of thunder echoed down through the storm-engulfed city of Aurora. Lightning flashed within the early afternoon clouds, igniting the bustling traffic below in the glints of multicolored blooms. Rain pelted the streets, sidewalks, and buildings with sounds akin to falling marbles, either annoying or satisfying those who could listen. Poor pedestrians who had found themselves outside walked with umbrellas above their heads or simply took the rain head-on. This was all Jay was able to see, however, as he and his father both sat within a restaurant booth while looking out the window. It was now Sunday, 12:30 p.m. to be exact. Today was a busy one for Void, Jida, and Joby, for it was Nock's re-election rally date, meaning they would have to go out and help support him for a possible final serving term. However, before everything would go into boring speech mode, Void decided that today he'd take Jay out to his favorite fast food joint called Gilbert's Burger Corner. The older Spark had realized that Jay was in definite need of a break, so he figured that perhaps taking him out to eat would help clear the little one's mind. But even so, there were some things Void had to say himself. "Thanks for taking me out today, Dad. It's been a while since we've done something like this." Jay thanked, while gently plucking fries off a plate and stuffing them into his mouth. "Hey, that's what dads are for. Besides, I need a break as well. This week has been rough." Void replied as he put a little too much ketchup on his greasy burger and took one large and almost disgusting bite. "You're telling me..." Void's child said in return before reaching to his side and taking a bite out of his own smaller burger, however, plucking the pickles off before doing so. As Jay chewed, he couldn't help but turn to his side and see the waves of fancy vehicles, some with the words, "Vote Rogers," and others, "Vote Welsh." Jay wasn't entirely caught up to speed on Aurora's politics, but he was well versed enough to know that Nock could either still be in charge by the end of the month, or be out of his office and back in the workshop. "So, what time are you guys going to root for Uncle Nock?" Jay asked, while Void continued to chew on his food. "We leave at 5, rally starts at 8, gonna be in Times Square and everything. You gonna hang out with your friends again while we're out?" Nodding his head, Jay took another bite from his burger and then wiped a slop of ketchup from his cheek, now looking forward to the day's later events. "Yeah, we're gonna be out while you guys do your, adult stuff. Tell Uncle Nock that he has my support, though." Looking off to his side, Void watched as a tired, afro-haired man and a red female ripple served others their food. If he was being honest with himself, the burger joint was always dawned in empty souls and low shades of light, usually dark with the window providing a pure semblance of sight. A grayish-blue stormy light cast itself upon the two Sparks, causing Void to look to his left and stare into his reflection. A wobbly, unfit face locked itself with Void's oval-shaped eyes. His blue irises glinted faintly back into his soul, recalling something that he wanted to tell Jay, something that he felt as though he needed to hear. "Hey, when's the last time I told you a story?" Void asked as he turned back forward, seeing Jay stuffing his face with a sandwich of grease. I'm not sure. When I was like 7? Jay speculated, causing Void to smile and chuckle. "So a long time then," the older Spark reinstated, before slowly leaning forwards in his seat and asking, "Would you care to hear another? It's one that I've had for many years now." To this, Jay perked up and instantly said, "Yeah!" The small Spark truly loved his father's tales. Whether it was from an adventure or simple life lessons, Jay would eat them up like a kid in a candy buffet. They would always bring comfort in dark times, so to hear a new one was an exhilarating concept. Alrighty then. Keep your ear holes open because, this one's important to me. Voight stated as he sat back in his seat and closed his eyes, leaving Jay to lean in with an open and excited mind. With a blue glow in his horns, Voight connected his spark-like essence with Jay's, in turn, drowning out the noise around them. Within their sights, a dim blue and purple shade looked to surround their forms. It wasn't actually there, rather a projection between their shared minds. As all noise fell to his father, Jay sat there eagerly, awaiting the tale. In a small town nestled among rolling hills, there lived a young boy. The older Spark began as his horns quietly hummed out a vibrating tune. The boy was born into a loving and prosperous family, surrounded by wealth and care. His parents showered him with every material possession he could desire. This boy grew up believing that he had everything he needed, and that life would always be this way. With his smile fading to that of a more stern stare, Jay tilted his head and wondered where this was going. This wasn't a normal story, he reckoned. This sounded more personal, ancient in a way. That was the only way Jay could describe it. One fateful day, however, tragedy struck the town. Voight continued, as his face scrunched a tad to his own words. The creatures of the night attacked, leaving destruction in their wake. The boy's family home wasn't spared from this wrath, for his once grand home now lay in ruins, reduced to rubble and debris. Everything the boy had taken for granted was suddenly gone. Slowly changing hue, Jay watched as the blue and purple shades around their eyes shifted to that of an almost fiery orange, leaving the little Spark a tad concerned to where this tale was heading. The boy and his family fled, and many in the town fought back with their magic. However, falling in the process. In a last-ditch effort, the boy's parents placed him within a boat upon the town shore. The boat, however, could only fit one soul. Reaching up and around, Voight clenched his hands together and leaned on the table, head a tad low, and worrying Jay a little bit more. As the boy wept upon the water, he questioned why his once carefree world had crashed and burned around him. Why him? Why his people? It was then he learned a valuable lesson, that true happiness doesn't come from material possessions or grand gestures, but from the moments of connection and appreciation for the world around himself. And so, he lived from that day on in just say a more positive light. As Voight reopened his eyes, Jay could see that his father's irises were jet black, until they slowly faded back in the view with an almost memorable stare. Unlike most of the other stories Voight told, this one didn't end with a smile or good ending. It was rather ambiguous, odd, and strangely familiar for him. Jay could see it in his eyes. That was sad. Why did you want to tell me that? Jay asked as the strange cloud faded from their vision. Voight now looked as though he was going to explain something. The way his veins had hummed their tensed-up blues showed that there was something more he wanted to say. Yet, he appeared to be holding back. The older Spark said as he silently took in the traumas of the past within his head. Voight wanted to explain why. He wanted to explain to his son what was happening. And in the end, Voight couldn't bear the weight of telling his little boy what he was, what he was connected to. He couldn't burden him like that. He refused to. Not yet. I just wanted you to know that you've got a good life, a lot of friends, family. A home. I just hope you know that. Scratch that. I want you to know that. Poking at his food, Jay bit the inside of his cheek before asking, "Is it because you once lost your home? Was that story... was that about you?" Jay asked with a worried set of eyes, leaving Void to fall silent for a few seconds. Looking down and taking hold of a napkin, Void picked it up and leaned over the table, wiping a smack of ketchup off another one of Jay's jackets. Up for interpretation, as all good authors tend to say. Void replied in a chuckle, before rubbing his boy's blueberry-colored head. "I know I've already said this, but just know there's a lot of us who care about you, that we'd always have your back. I just remember that, okay? No more running off." Nodding his head, Jay smiled at his dad, who couldn't help but smile back, even if there was a sense of exhaustion behind his eyes. "That'll be $14.95. A large, brownish, yellow-furred, and cigarette-smelling rabbit said, as he slammed a check for him down upon the table. Yeah, Gilbert, I know. Honestly, you should be used to it by now. We are essentially your only real customers these days," Voight said as he began to pull out some cash, while someone who had been eating ran out the door, looking to almost puke. The store owner gruffed as he rolled his bloodshot eyes and took the money, leaving both Void and Jay to chuckle. "Alright, bud, let's get going. We still gotta pick out a dress for your cousin for the night," the older Spark said as he stretched and then opened a portal to the ground, where both he and his son leapt through, leaving behind a little tip as they did so. As the clock struck the time, 5 o'clock p.m., Void and Jida stood within their room, getting ready for the long and boring rally ahead. The blue glowing Spark had changed his attire to a deep sapphire suit, donned in white shoulder spheres and shoes. A set of buttons rested below a blue bow tie around his neck that Void was struggling to adjust. "Hold still, you dork," Jida said with a cheeky smirk before walking up behind the Spark and aiding him. The orange-haired angel had decided upon wearing a bright and shiny silk-shaded red dress. This long and vibrant gown extended all the way down the covering a set of sneakers and sweatpants underneath. Jida still wasn't one for dresses and the fancy side of things, so the sneak in regular clothes was always something she tended to do these days. "Well, don't you just look amazing?" Void lovingly expressed with a wince as the bow tie was fastened around his soft metal neck. "And so do you," Jida replied with a wink as Joby then walked herself into the room. How do I look? This dress doesn't make me look fat, does it?" Joby asked as she spun herself around in a circle, showing off a cream yellow dress that Void and Jay had picked out for her. The sharp-horned Spark's legs and arms were fully exposed, while a pair of bright brown heels lay wrapped over Joby's sharp feet. With them on, she stood to be a few inches taller than her uncle, but still a tad smaller than her aunt. With a roll in her eyes, Jida approached and reached down to her niece, knocking off fuzz and other kinds of junk from her dress. "Oh, sweetheart, you're built like a fit and fast stallion. You look gorgeous." Reaching her hands up, Jida adjusted the dangling gold jewels that rested around Joby's horns, and then patted her shoulder. "Like she said, you look wonderful, sweet pea." Void assured with a smile, before turning to look towards their bedroom door. "Jay!" he then called, resulting in the quickening sounds of footsteps to approach. Running in, wearing his classic blue, gray, and white hoodie attire from Friday, Jay answered with a little, Yeah, while the downpour of rain continued to pelt the roof above their heads. Hey, we're heading out. You sure you and your friends are going to be alright tonight? Weather's, Void asked before Joby chimed in. It's pretty shit, she said, while scratching at some food that was stuck in between her shark-like teeth. Yep, we're going to be somewhere that has a roof above our heads. We'll be alright. The small spark answered, while giving his family a double thumbs up. Alright, sweetheart. Remember that you can always use your constellations to warm up if needed, Chida said before kneeling down and giving her boy a kiss on his forehead. Be careful tonight, alright? She finished while pinching the side of his cheek. I will. The small spark replied with a grin as he brushed off his mother. Alright then. We'll see you later tonight, bud. Have fun. Void bid his farewell as he opened a portal to the rally within the city. Yep, see you then, the small spark said as the three began to walk their way through, until Void stopped, perked up, and spoke again. Oh, also, if you could, maybe check up on Pofnu later, Void asked with half of his body through the portal. Just follow the large pink glow in the forest if you do so, dear, Chida added before blowing his boy a kiss and crossing through with Joby. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Is she almost done, evolving? Jay asked his father with a shoulder shrug, who promptly nodded. Should be done by tomorrow morning at most. Thanks a lot, bud. I love you. Void ended as he waved and then crossed through with a seal, leaving Jay alone once again. Or so they thought. Jay! Hey! You got a second? Perking up and turning around, the Sparklet looked down upon his parents' doorway and locked his eyes with Lotus, who was looking up towards him with bright glowing irises. Hey! What are you doing out of my room? You can't just... In a now panicked state, Jay leaned down and scooped the tiny block up in his hands, all while giving him a stern stink eye. Dude, they could have saw you! What are you doing? Jay asked, while the cube blinked and replied. That's what I wanted to discuss with you, buddy, Lotus brought up, as Jay began marching his way back to his room. What do you mean? The Sparklet questioned back, with a curious attitude, as they crossed into the kitchen. Hiding like this. I can't keep hanging around the house in this state. Eventually, someone will notice me. I need to return back to my original state. I need to be able to move on my own terms, the cube stated with an almost ecstatic expression, leaving poor Jay to tilt his head in wonder. Original state? He asked, with Lotus nodding his face in response. Yeah. It may come as a surprise, but I do have a body. Arms, legs, all of that. This cube form just won't cut it if we're to expand upon your training. I need to be in my prime in order to help you more, Lotus explained in a buzzing set of sentences as Jay took a now interested seat at the dining room table. You must be some artifact then, Jay replied while crossing his arms and leaning back in his seat. Sure am, buddy. And I need your help. Only you can reactivate my normal form. Raising an eyebrow, Jay tilted his head to the side and asked, Me? How? Shifting his face to the side, Lotus's expression turned from that of an inquisitive one before shifting back to its smile. We're gonna need to find a place where electrical energy runs high. Once there, you can absorb the power and expel it into my little form. With the electric charge mixed with your advanced abilities, it should crack this shell like an egg. And bing bing boom, I can then hug you. Thinking on it for a minute, Jay knew he wanted to help his guiding hand back as payment from yesterday. But as for where to find a usable charge, the Sparklet had no clue. That was, to a strike of lightning from outside, the window caught his eye. As the yellow flash appeared and then dissipated within the span of a second, Jay's mind went to one specific place in Aurora, a place that may just be the key in freeing Lotus. I think I know where to go, he said, looking back down to the cube, who eyed him back with excitement. As rain and thunder continued to pour down upon the city of Aurora, it left many of those outside to hold on tightly to their umbrellas, except for Jay and his small group of friends. Walking together and marching through the rain, sprinkles with a splash of her race's native magic created a sparkling pink barrier above their heads, acting as though there'd be a large roof umbrella for the group. Everyone was donned in proper rain jackets and warm clothes, matching the colors they had worn that Friday. Fresh and cold puddles splashed below their boots and shoes as they all followed Jay and his cube-shaped friend. Jay, where exactly are we going? My fur is gonna get soaked, Florence asked in a sad tone while Sprinkles trotted alongside her. Hey, don't worry, Flo. My barrier should keep us all nice and warm, the green-haired girl with the cube head stated, as everyone else remained silent. Even Zeeby, who is normally the most talkative one, simply skated on by in a little bit of a worried state. Lotus says he needs a lot of power from myself to return to his normal form. And for that to happen, I need to absorb a lot of electricity. And the only place I can think of to do that is there. Rounding a street hill that was high above the rest of the city, Jay pointed down a long and sketchy road that led all the way towards the city's massive power plant. Shimmerings of many blues and pinks buzzed off large electrical poles and radio towers. This power plant was established to reach the rest of the city's energy supply, having been designed by Nox shortly after his first term. The area was like a massive battery, designed to perfectly enhance the city, and most of all, it was a great feeding ground for Jay to adapt to. Wait, you want to go into a high-voltage area during a thunderstorm? Maple asked as she stood at her friend's side, looking a tad concerned about where this was going. That seems very dangerous, AJ added as he approached and stood at Florence's side. Don't worry, guys. Once I'm in the area, all the electricity will get drawn to me. Think of myself as a metal rod to attract lightning. You guys won't be in any danger, Jay explained while Lotus stared onwards at the power plant in a deafening silence. Wait, wouldn't that technically mean you could get struck by lightning right now? Quinn asked as he turned his ghostly eyes upon Jay's stern stance. Only if I were to try. My dad can actually summon lightning down from his body to supercharge himself during storms. It's a rare occurrence, though, Jay explained as he turned around and eyed the massive rally a good ways off into the lower distance. Although small, Jay could see thousands of people gathered in front of a massive screen stage, where his uncle was about to give his speech. Spotlights went up into the sky, cars surrounded the Times Square. It was crazy. Hopefully things would be alright going forwards for him, Jay hoped. Alright, everyone in the city's distracted. Let's get in and do this thing. In and out, Jay boasted as he began marching his way forwards and leading the trash pack, all while Lotus continued to stare onwards in anticipation. Approaching and hurdling a fence, Jay landed down with a loud and sloppy splash, as the others followed behind. Zeeby, however, struggled to get over this barrier, but soon enough, she managed to get over it as well with her own little splash fall. The sounds of low hums and buzzing shocks filled everyone's ears, as they all looked up to see massive electrical rows and pillars, lining everything before their eyes. Pulses and surges of both blues and pinks traveled up and down their slender forms, all while little hums of electricity scuttled about through the wires and cables. This place looked to have been vacant for the special night. However, cameras appeared to have been activated. That was until Lotus released a small pulse of energy and sent them all to surge out. With audible pops, the cameras all rattled and quivered before suddenly steaming and going limp. Forwards, Lotus commanded as he eyed the center of the outer energy field. Over there. That's where you'll be able to absorb all the energy around you. The cube guided as everyone began trudging forwards behind Jay. Right here? The small spark asked, as he and his friends found themselves around what had to be hundreds of energy conductors, all being linked up to certain sectors of the city. Yep, I can sense it. This is perfect, the cube said as he turned around within Jay's palms and eyed him up with a stern stare. Set me down, friend. After that, hold your arms out and gently focus. Intake all that's around you. Feel its essence flow through you. And afterwards, well, the cube explained before smirking. Let's just get step one out of the way. Nodding his head, Jay turned around and waved his friends off to stand a few feet back. They didn't need to be told twice, as the whole group stood away from the scene in a tense anticipation. Jay, please be careful, Mabel asked, with Florence nodding in agreement. Please, she asked, as the others stared worriedly at it all. Nodding once and then whirling back around, Jay took in a long breath, then held out his arms. Focusing as gently as he could, the small spark began to manipulate the electricity field that surrounded him, and then began to absorb its essence. Drifting out from the many slimmed-out conductors, particles of both blue and pinks looked to drift its way into Jay's palms. The small spark began to ever so gently buzz and twinkle, but with the lessons he had learned from both his father and Lotus, Jay took his time and slowly charged up. With a mixture of those same blues and hot pinks, Jay's constellations and vein swirls began to pulse and hum in a positive light, making the small spark look akin to a neon nightlight. For a few seconds, the lights in some sectors of the city flickered and short-circuited, even down within the rally. The large TV screen began to sputter and glitch for only a moment. It was so small of an issue that half the people below didn't even realize what happened. All except for Void, who sat in the front row beside Jida and Joby. What was that? He asked, only for Jida to reply with, what was what? Before Void could explain, Mayor Rogers approached the stage and was greeted with a series of claps and cheers. Behind him, his husband Cott and assistant Jet waved and stood off to the side. Cheering and hollering next to Void's side was both Tucker and Sarv, along with Commissioner Sankson and his little daughters. As he stood guard with some fellow cops, they all nodded towards the mayor, while Void just sat there in silence. Although the mood was bright for the moment, he couldn't help but feel that something was off. Like there was an issue within the world. Something wasn't right. The nature of the area was mixed, but he didn't know what the issue was, and was left feeling alert. Back at the power plant, Jay began to both buzz and surge with energy. Opening his eyes and taking in a breath, he looked down the Lotus with his palms wide open. The spark's eyes were glowing white, and a shimmering pollen-like energy began to fizzle off his body, leaving the tiny cube to grin wider than he had before. Am I the only one who feels like something's off? Blippi sighed, while Sprinkles nodded in agreement. Yeah, this is kinda weird. Even for me, ZB said, while huddling close to Florence's side and causing the wolf to blush for a second. Jay? Mabel then asked, but was completely ignored by the little spark's enthusiasm. Okay, now what? The Sparklet asked as his vocals sounded the ripple with an electrified power. Just take hold of me and transfer all of that combined essence into my body. With it, I will adapt and break free from this shell. Lotus explained with excitement, leaving Jay the nod and reach down. Wait, before you do this, I just want to thank you. I know we haven't known each other for long, but I feel as though we're going to have a long and running friendship from this day forwards. Thanks for everything, kiddo. Lotus thanked with a warm smile, leaving Jay to do the same. I should honestly be thanking you. The little spark replied as he took hold of the cube. Save it for later. Just get me out of this thing. Nodding his head and then focusing upon the tiny friend, Jay squinted his eyes and sent all of his energy into the living item. As he did so, the power plant began to both buzz and shake with power. Sparks and electricity expelled out of the machines around them, and all headed towards the two multiversal beings. Shouting, all of Jay's friends leapt back as the two of them began to glow and shimmer with a blinding light. Within an instant, the entirety of Aurora began to flash on and off as a citywide shortage erupted from the power Jay expelled. The cables and power cells around all began to both buzz and spark, while Lotus started to laugh and cheer. His small body began to glow brighter than ever before, flashing and cracking with purple light. Jay himself began to yell, his body flaking off pollen and erupting with a power, until at last, with one final pulse, Jay released one last gust of energy that knocked the city out into a massive blackout.